April 13th. And I'll call the meeting to order and just remind you that we are live streaming and video recorded for the public. Now, are there any late agenda items from the committee? None. Okay. If I could have somebody make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Kevin and seconder Jason, all in favor? Great. Okay. And we have one set of minutes this evening to deal with from our last meeting on March 23rd. Are there any concerns, issues about the minutes that anybody noted? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented? Angela, seconder. Kevin, great, all in favor? Great, thank you. Then, okay. So we have one presentation this evening for a property on Irwin Street, and planner Christine Mays will introduce. Go ahead, Christine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this development permit, which is development permit 1296, is at 415 460 Irwin Street, and it is for two multifamily buildings, and that's one on each lot. So there's two lots here, and these comprise of 4 one-bedroom dwelling units, and that includes 1 live-work unit and 1 two-bedroom dwelling unit. So the subject properties are zoned neighborhood centers, that's CC2, and they're designated neighborhood center in the city plan. Subject properties are located on the west side of Irwin Street, and that's between Baker Street and Needham Street. Also, the property falls within, or both properties fall within Development Permit Area 4, which is abandoned mine working hazards, and Development Permit Area 8, and that's form and character. And we've got 2 sets of guidelines that are applicable, and that's the General Development Permit Area Design Guidelines, as well as South End Neighborhood Plan. And there are several variances that are associated with the proposal, and that includes second trellis on each lot, reducing the setback to the front yard setback, and that's from 4.5 meters to 3.61 meters, reducing the setback to the side yard setbacks, the far ones, from 3 meters to 1.5 meters, and then to the interior to 2.7 meters, as well as increasing the maximum height for principal building, that's 10 meters to 10.9 meters, reducing the required number of parking spaces from 8 to 6 on 450 Irwin, and increasing the percentage of small car parking spaces from 40 to 83 on 450 Irwin, and 40 to 50 on 460 Irwin. And that's it, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Great. Well, we'll let the applicant go ahead. So who's presenting this evening? Joyce?
Hi. Actually, my colleague Kriti is going to be presenting and here to answer any questions or add anything at the end, but I'll just let her take it away.
Great.
Kriti, before you start, I wanted to make one comment. This lot is 6,200 square feet. It's 47 feet by 132 in depth. So it's quite a small, challenging lot as far as physical size. And in this zone, the minimum, if we were to if this zone was a new subdivision, the minimum lot size would be 1,000 square meters. And this lot size is 576 square meters. So as in our other variance requests, we're being caught in a lot size that is much smaller than the minimum standard today. And we're applying, or the bylaw is applying those setbacks on the 1,000 square foot lot. So I always feel bad coming in and asking for these side yard variances, but I just wanted to bring attention again that the whole building is only about 3,500 square feet in size. So quite a challenging lot as far as lot size. Sorry, that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to just share my screen. Okay, so hi, my name is Kriti and I'm going to be presenting our design proposal for 450 460 Irwin Street today. So to start with, I think I'm going to just provide some orientation by zooming onto this aerial map here. So this is Irvin Street to the east and Baker Street to the north. These are our two lots, that is lot 450 and lot 460. We have both these lots facing Irvin Street to the east, and we also have access from Baker Street in the north through this other lot 450. We have this common accessway that is accessible to both lot 450 and 460. While these are two separate lots, we are designing one building per lot, and both these buildings are identical and mirrored images of each other. So I'm just gonna, okay, so this is a sort of an aerial view of our neighborhood and a rendering of what our proposed development will look like right here in the center. Moving on to the site plan. We have the parking located in the rear and the buildings located facing Irvin Street. We sort of, this land has some amount of slope. So between the west property line and the east, there's about a 10 feet difference, almost one level. So what we've done is divided the lot into two pieces around here and stepped the lot in such a way that our parking level is almost one level higher than the level of the rest of the lot that is closer to Irvin Street level. To explain this further, I'm going to quickly jump onto one of our elevations here, and here you might be able to see that this is our parking level and Baker Street. Our entrance to the lot is at this level, and this is Irvin Street here, and our building is sort of tucked into this corner in such a way that this section of the building is accessible directly from the parking area, and this entire section of the building is accessible directly from Irvin Street. Going back to our site plan, we have a total of 16 parking spaces for both the lots located in the rear, accessed from with a common drive lane. We also have common trash facilities as well as this common central space here, which is sort of a common amenity space between the two buildings. Each building has 5 residential units and 1 commercial retail unit. Of the 5 residential units, 4 are 1 bedroom and 1 is a 2-bedroom unit. We also have a series of stairs here, here, and here, sort of navigating the 2 levels that exist, that we have created on this lot. In terms of the building entrances, we have 2 unit entrances, 2 residential unit entrances from here, and 1 commercial retail unit entrance from here. We also have 1 one-bedroom unit entrance from here. All of these are sort of at the lower level. And from the upper level, we have 2 one-bedroom unit entrances from the parking level directly. And maybe I can move on to the 3D model. When I move on to the 3D model, this will become more clear. Just to run through the site plans really quick, the floor plans really quickly. On level 1 here, we have our commercial retail unit with entrance from Irvin Street directly. On this side, we have access to one bedroom unit here and a 2-bedroom unit here. So this is our 2-bedroom unit located here on level 1, and it goes across to level 2 here. So these are our 2 bedrooms. In the rear here, we have access to 2 one-bedroom units. So that starts off on level 2 with the living space here and goes on to level 3 here with the bedroom space. It also has 2 balconies facing the rear of the lot. Additionally, we have 1 one-bedroom unit right here, 1 level 1-bedroom unit that's accessed from the central courtyard space between the 2 buildings. We also have some common spaces, which is bike storage, some service space and storage space located here. We also have this open deck as well as some balconies facing Irvin Street here. One of the things that I also want to bring your attention to is sort of how the building appears. It actually is a 3-story building, but it appears to be like a 2-story building from this side, which is from the parking side, as well as from Irvin Street. So maybe I can show you a clearer image of that in, say, these two images. So what you can see here is that it appears more like a two-story building from Irvin, as well as from the rear. And that's because of the way that we've manipulated the plans and mitigated the slope through levels. Maybe I can jump onto the 3D to explain this more clearly. So here we have entrances to our residential units here and here. That's also here and here. And this is our commercial entrance. So one of the things that we've tried to do is to kind of create a separate sort of distinct design space for this area, where we've pushed back the fence here and created a bigger public realm and created a difference of materiality as well to distinguish the commercial space. But primarily this is a residential building. So we have a strong residential character, and we have some modern architectural elements throughout. We've also maintained standard West Coast colors for this entire project. Here you can see the level difference between the parking level as well as the level below. And from the rear here, we have a parking access from here, and our two residential entrances of our one bedrooms access from here and here. We also have this central space, which is have some potential for landscape and will provide sort of a common amenity space for residents of both buildings to interact. In terms of the massing of the building, we've sort of tried to create like the central biggest mass sort of in the center and in keeping with the South End guidelines, and also create sort of a lower massing towards the north and south property lines. We also have lots of balcony spaces, open decks, windows and doors facing the street, and we've tried to sort of follow through with the same design concept to the rear, where we have balconies and windows and doors facing the parking as well. I think I might lastly jump back onto to explain some of the data. So in terms of the FAR and GFA, we're sort of well within the allowable limits. We are asking for a height variance. And I think I'm just gonna jump onto the elevation here to just explain this further. So, yes, on this level, you can see that this is the variance that we're asking for. So it's pretty much just this piece that is the 0.9 meters. And this is because we've stepped the lot for one thing. And another thing is that this variance is entirely for the top end of the sloped roof of the design. So that's something to keep in mind. In terms of the next variance, we're asking for variances for front and side setbacks. And I'm going to move on to the site plan here. And as Douglas mentioned, we are on a CC2 zoned lot, and this lot is much smaller. And part of the reason why that we need these variances is because of the size constraints of these lots. So in terms of dimensions, we're pretty much providing minimums in terms of minimum standard car, drive aisle, small car, walkway, building, and this is why we end up asking for a variance at this end. It's just because we don't have the space. In terms of the side yard setback, one of the things that we've done is we've pushed the building sort of to both corners in such a way that we have a setback of 1.5 meter on either side, but we're using the rest of the setback in such a way that we're able to provide this common space in the middle and foster a sense of community by providing this common space. And a trellis variance as well, and that's something that you can see here. We have two trellises and on either end and one in the middle, and this is the one that we're asking for a variance for. I think it's just to improve wayfinding. And finally, we're asking for a parking variance, and for that I'm going to just jump onto the site plan. So what we are actually asking for is a variance of 2 cars here. So of the 6 spaces on this lot, we have a requirement of 8, and of the 10 spaces on this lot, we have a requirement of 8. So something to keep in mind here is that in total, for both the lots, we have a requirement of 16, and we're providing 16. It's just that for lot 450, this shows up as a variance, but in reality, we're designing this more as one cohesive parking lot. And so that's something to consider. In terms of the parking ratio variance, we do have a ratio variance for small car for each of the lot, but in total, a small car ratio is close to 60%, and the standard car is 40%. So we have about a total 20% increase variance request in totality between the two lots. And part of the reason for that is, again, the site constraint that Douglas was talking about. Because this is a much smaller lot than what it is zoned for, we end up with not having enough space for a standard car to fit that in. Like, this entire row is small car, and if we had an additional 3 feet, we just make the entire thing standard car. Another thing I want to point out here is that we are providing additional bike parking spaces for both the lots. Our total requirement is 6 spaces, and we're providing 10. And in a manner of speaking, we're hoping this compensates for the less than ideal parking situation, hoping that this development can promote more usage of bikes. Yeah, I think finally we are just hoping to provide this compact and efficient multi-use development to meet rising housing demand. I think that's all for me. Thank you.
So Brad, the landscape architect, was unable to make it tonight. I know that you received his design. I can pull it up on the screen if we need to. Let me just do that. I'm not going to speak to the plants because that's not my world. But just in terms of his layout and design, most of it is to reinforce a lot of the major concepts that Kriti mentioned in terms of wayfinding. So having trellises in order to be able to prioritize how people move through the project. Front entrance trellis here and here for the residential units. Creating a public courtyard here at the front along Irwin Street, adding some greenery and a sense of place between the buildings, and directing people to and from front and back, depending on whether accessing parking in the buildings or whether they're coming from the residential to the units. All of his moves in terms of landscaping have been done in order to reinforce those ideas and concepts. And then one of the other things that we have on the landscape plan that wasn't mentioned yet is we've actually created a fence line between the parking. It doesn't go there, but between the parking and the building, because these residential unit doors are really adjacent to the parking. We felt that it would be nice to have some sort of low screening to screen some of the headlights and sort of create that sense of privacy and distinct difference between parking and residential. And yeah, any of the sort of comments or feedback, we can have Brad address them at the comprehensive letter if need be. And that's it for us. And Mark's here too if we need to answer any questions on the civil side, but I don't think he has much to present.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there any questions of staff before we get going on this? Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Christine, are these 2 lots going to be consolidated?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, and maybe that might be a question for Joyce later as to why they're not being consolidated, because obviously that would relate to the question regarding the parking variance. So that's all I have to ask. Thanks, Christine.
Okay, and Hillary, go ahead. You're on mute.
How about now?
Good.
Okay. Yeah, I just have a question about the stairs. Was was like a ramp or like accessibility discussed as part of this design, or is there a piece that I'm missing on that?
That's a question for staff.
Yeah, just to see if like, so that I don't, I'm not like asking about something that's already been like considered, or if there's reasoning why the stairs are the way that they are, and that there isn't like ramp accessibility to that back parking area.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I don't believe that any of those units are adaptable or accessible. And so I think maybe Joyce or Krithi can confirm that. And so also too, because of the two split lots, there wouldn't be a requirement for an accessible space either.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I have one actually. I'm wondering, Christine, if you could clarify for me what the difference is between a live workspace and the CRU. I noticed in your reference to this project, you call it a live workspace, and the applicant calls it a CRU. And I noticed there's also not a full bathroom in there, so I'm kind of wondering what exactly are those two spaces?
Yeah, so usually it's that connection to the residential unit. So you'll see if on Krithi's floor plan that there would have been a door that led to the stairs that go up to the upper portion of that level. And so,
okay, I didn't see that. Maybe I missed that. Okay, so it's attached to one of the units then.
That's right. Yeah, and so live work is a permitted commercial use in this particular zone.
And so, in terms of the applicant using the term CRU, are they different? I'm still having a little difficult time. To me, a commercial unit is something quite different than a live workspace.
Yeah, and certainly, so I guess we're looking at it in terms of, is it a commercial use? And so live work would be listed as one of those commercial uses in the CC2 zone. And so that's where, and it's the functionality of having it connected to the actual unit itself. So somebody living there could presumably use that for commercial uses, a little store, anything that's sort of listed in our live work definition. I can certainly read that out for you guys as well.
Okay, no, I wasn't too clear on that, and I saw the two different terms being used, but thank you very much. Yeah, okay.
Oh, Marie, I think you've muted yourself.
Oh, yes, I have. Thank you. Okay, I'm just wondering if you could take the shared screen down, please, and then I'm going to have the committee members give their comments, and within that, they may be asking some questions related to what I just asked about the CRU and so on. So I'm going to let Jason, if you'd like to go ahead first. And,
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to answer your question, the CRU is a typical term to apply to any commercial space. So it's a commercial retail unit. Typically, it's in a mall or something where you hear it, where each of those stores are considered CRU. So live work is the entire unit. CRU is just the commercial room associated with it.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah. Very ambitious program to fit on such a small lot, and I think you did a really nice job with it, actually. I really appreciate the massing and the sensitivity to the massing and how you were able to step it away from Irwin Street so that even though it is 3 stories from the Irwin side, it doesn't feel like you don't have 3 stories presenting themselves to you. It steps backwards with some decks, and then two stories from the backside. I think it's a really nice design solution to that. I did have a couple of questions. I wasn't sure, and it wasn't clear from the drawings, where you have that cut between the front and backside. What is that wall? Is that just a concrete retaining wall? Is there going to be any vegetative treatment to it? What is that intended to be?
Yeah, I think it's just we could probably look at the treatment of that actual wall. But there are some planters there that will obviously build up and become more mature. But yeah, we could probably provide a bit more clarity on what that wall looks like.
Yeah, that would be great if there's a little more detail around that. If there could be, a screen of some sort to kind of cover that up, it'd be nice, especially if, within that enclosed space. If it was softened up a little bit, it might help with the reverberation and make it a little more occupiable space. So I have a few more questions. I saw there was a large tree on either outside of Unit 3 on both sides. That's not a raised planter? That's just it's just at grade?
Sorry, I was just zooming back to it to take a look at
it. Sure. Yeah.
My intention would be to make it a partially raised one, given the fact that that wall is going to be quite high. But that level of detail isn't on that landscape drawing. So we can definitely, I think it would be helpful to provide a section through that area to give you a better idea, or planning a better idea of what that looks like.
Okay. And then my last question for you is the 3 sets of stairs coming down from that raised parking area. What are those stairs? Are they concrete, wood? What is the plan there? Do you know?
Yeah, I would anticipate them being concrete, sort of built into the as the slope is falling.
Okay.
Built into the.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong, Doug.
Concrete stairs are very, very expensive to make, so we probably do it in wood, and the wood would complement the West Coast theme. I should also mention, I own a lot to the left of that. The works and services were just too horrendous for us to do multifamily there as well, so I built a single family home there, and it's literally about 15 feet higher than these two lots, and the reason is that in these multifamily, we've dug into the base of the building, into the lot, and then taken the elevation and the parking. So from a size and scale point of view, they're going to be quite a bit smaller than the single family house that we built next to it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Council, just to comment on you asked about the ramps, that if there's a 10-foot elevation ramp, the code says you have to be a 1 in 12 slope. That means you're a 120-foot ramp, which would take up the entire property pretty much. So the only way to actually achieve any sort of accessibility from front to back would be with like a lift of some kind, which would be very prohibitively expensive, I'm sure.
Yeah, given the fact that we have access from the road directly at that level, I think is beneficial. And we have parking in the back if, say, somebody needed to either access via the street through the access lane or even drive in. So yeah, it's unfortunate the site has so much slope we can't put a ramp in.
Yeah. So that's all my questions. Thank you, Ryan. So my only comments on the rest of the design. So I would say I agree with the city comment that maybe could be some greater differentiation around the CRU. I like the signage piece, but it kind of gets lost in the color palette. So maybe finding a way to make that stand out, or even adding some additional glazing to the CR unit, particularly around the corner into that interior courtyard would be nice. Really make it feel more of an actual commercial space as opposed to an additional bedroom that would almost certainly become an Airbnb suite. And then in terms of that internal courtyard being an amenity space, from the landscaping plan, it looks like it's almost entirely covered with vegetation, and it might actually be nice if there was some additional space, usable space down in that area for people to occupy that space. Right now there's only a small area of a stoop in front of the door to the unit. But otherwise, those are all my comments. I think they did a really nice job in terms of fitting a lot of density and massing onto a very tight site. So, and I have no issues with the requested variances. I think the massing is such considered in such a way that it has very little impact, I think, on the adjacent properties. So, thank you.
Great, thanks, Jason. Angela.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everybody, for your presentation. Another constrained site, and great job packing it all in there. I just wanted to point out some things I thought were great. Just like it's awesome that there's so many balconies and windows on either side. So there's lots of eyes on the street, both at Irwin side and at the parking level. And having the corridor in the center is a great benefit. But as Jason said, that was one of my other comments, was that I was going to say, is just to maybe to present some more programming in that courtyard, more usable space. It can't really tell what's there to entice people to hang out there yet. Maybe a barbecue area or something like that. It will be sort of shaded for the most part. So if there was maybe some sort of cover where you could go and have a communal congregation sort of barbecue area or something like that, might be something to think about for that area. And as far as the staff comments with some sort of art installation, maybe that could be sort of tied into that area in the courtyard somewhere, because it is a nice corridor looking from Irwin Street in, and if there's sort of, that's where you could maybe find the visual art piece and the central communal space. Seems like that would be a lovely thing to pass by as a pedestrian. So the other thing I was going to mention was I agree with staff for adding as many drought tolerant species as possible if there was opportunity for that. And agree with Jason for treatment of the wall. One thing I didn't notice that there's any electric car spaces for the parking area. Is that implemented in there somewhere through the chair?
It has been included.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. As far as the garbage location, I know staff was suggesting maybe putting it somewhere where there isn't an interaction between cars and pedestrians, but I think, in my opinion, it's probably in its best location, just based on not having the garbage close to the building itself, and it's really not a far walk across the parking lot, I don't think. Keep the smell farther away. But associated with that, I was wondering if there was any possibility to extend the pedestrian walkway that comes out between the two buildings across the parking lot. So pedestrians going out to carry their garbage out might just have an obvious path to go, but it would go between parking stall 15 and 16. And I don't know if there's any space to push them to the east a little bit towards what's that side street? Bush?
Beaker.
Yes. So anyway, that was just a comment that I had to consider. And as well, agree with Jason on the just creating a more distinct commercial space there. And maybe it's just partially what he said with the glazing or coloring, but just emphasizing that commercial component to the building. Otherwise, I did also agree with staff in terms of the character. This is sort of an overarching thing, is the character of the buildings themselves. I know there are a lot of more modern buildings coming to the area, but the guidelines still relate to heritage buildings. So I don't know how difficult it would be to somehow squeeze in some heritage style architecture into the building versus it looks very modern right now. So that was just in keeping with the guidelines. I would suggest that a more heritage feel to it might be more appropriate for Irwin Street. And as far as the building design goes, I was thinking that those two front balconies might do well with having some weather protection over top because they're quite large balconies. Or are they, sorry now, are the large ones in the back? They're in the back, right?
The two large ones are in the front.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about, is the ones in the front. And I believe that is all the comments I had. So thank you very much. I'll pass it on.
Great. Thanks, Angela. Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Joyce and your team, for the presentation. I agree with most of the comments that were made by Angela and Jason. The weather protection went over the upper decks. I'm a little bit unsure of how that could be done in a way that could work well with the form and character. My concern with that would be with those decks would be more relating to the privacy between those two large decks. And Joyce, whether or not you considered privacy walls or something to keep those two units a little bit, give them a little bit more privacy.
Are we talking about the front two units and the top
Yeah,
floor?
the top floor decks, the large decks. The lower balconies, I'm not really concerned as much about, but the upper deck, obviously are going to find a lot more usage with furniture and stuff, and whether or not you considered or are concerned about the privacy of those decks from one from the other.
Yeah, no, it's actually not something we really considered. I'm feel like my personal take is that the relationship is far enough apart that it won't, we won't be feeling like we're right on top. You would be right on top of your neighbor. And just given the densification, the density of this type of project, it felt like it was far enough apart. But if we can definitely visit that idea if there's some concern, if people feel like maybe that they are too close together.
Yeah, it's one of those things, you just never know what you're going to get in a situation like that. You can have a tenant across from you get along really great, you have a conversation with, and you might end up with a tenant across that you don't get along with and you would like privacy. So it's an iffy thing. I'm not sure if I want to put it in there as a recommendation. I wanted to more or less just point it out to you more than anything, unless somebody else, anybody else wants to jump in on that one and discuss it. Back to the beginning, I like how you cited the buildings. I like how you did push them to the outside and are granting or asking for a variance for the siting of the side yard setbacks, because it does create that very nice corridor that goes down the middle. So I really appreciate that. I think you've done very well with the siting and circulation as well around the buildings. Form and character, I like the form and character of the buildings. I think whether it's heritage or more contemporary is really a matter of taste, but all I could say is throughout that neighborhood, especially down Halliburton, there are a lot of mixes of new developments happening through there, including more modern architecture. I'm fine with it, but if it is something that you want to go with the South End guidelines, it is something you might want to address, but I'm fine with it personally. I agree that looking at ways to identify the live-work units was brought up earlier. It would be something you might want to consider. I think you did a great job with the storage facilities inside the buildings for bike and also for general storage. We normally don't see that, so again, very well done. Landscape concept. It's too bad Brad isn't here, but I think he did a very good job. The public art, I think there are opportunities, especially along Irwin Street in the main center area, to do something with public art. Site lighting, are you going to be looking as bollards or wall packs for the most part? Not sure if that's for Doug.
That's a good Brad question.
Yeah.
We'll do some nice lighting.
Yeah. It's I guess you do have the opportunity to do both, but it's keeping on a residential scale. So the site lighting, looking at it from a residential standpoint, would be something that I'd recommend. And I noticed You're providing one major tree along Irwin Street on the one corner. Why isn't there a tree on the northeast corner?
Good Brad question. I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think that it might help to anchor that part. There's on the adjoining property that there's no trees. I think there might be an opportunity to anchor both corners by providing another large deciduous tree there. So I would recommend that. Other than that, I support the variances. I think it's a very nice project. So well done. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Kevin and Hillary.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, just had a question. So 450 is the property that the driveway entrance is on, and that's owned by the same property owner? Is that how that was working? So are there plans to like further develop 450 as well eventually, or?
Go ahead, Doug, if you want to answer that.
Yes, that property's already been developed, and there will be a statutory right-of-way crossing the back.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, I think that you've done a good job of dealing with the varying heights of this property, and the stepped approach is nice. That you've got a 3-story in there, but it looks like 2-story from the front, so the variance definitely makes sense in that respect. I did sort of wonder about the weather protection for the balconies as well, especially the lower, the first floor balcony on the front. Also just from a privacy perspective of the person with the balcony up top being able to look directly down onto your balcony, but privacy in general in that area, since you're on the street anyway, is sort of limited. So yeah, understand that might not be doable in that sense. And yeah, better demarking the live work units, with whether that's like color, or maybe that'll just happen naturally with the signage that they put up, but I thought those comments were appropriate as well. And yeah, totally understand, appreciate the clarification around like how big the ramp would have to be to make that site accessible. And I think I'm always just trying to think of accessibility not only from like someone who may use a wheelchair, but also for like a family with a stroller, or the feasibility of like carrying your groceries up and down to the car. But because of it, it's right on the road as well, they can come around in that way. So I think that certainly makes sense, and I appreciate the discussion around that. But yeah, thank you for the density in this neighborhood, and it's definitely needed. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Hillary. Well, I don't have a whole lot to add there. I think everybody's really sort of hit on many of my own comments. I think it's a great project. It's always Joyce's projects here, and Critty now as well, because they're all very they're always sort of very interesting, challenging properties, and then you produce something that's really quite interesting. I like the way that you have the pathway between the buildings and you turn that into amenity space. So again, I would really support trying to think of ways to make that a little bit more of an interesting space that people can spend a bit of time in, since there's not a lot of open space on this property. I appreciate the fact that you're putting in permeable pavers on the parking lot, and actually your landscape designer has added, I think from that what I saw, a little bit of green space there as well. So wherever you can put it, I think it's going to be appreciated for sure. My one concern, I guess, again, is the heritage look there. I think we're sort of gradually losing some of our, nice heritage neighborhoods, but Irwin Street is very kind of mixed and uneven. But right across the street, you have a whole row of sort of individual family houses, and you've got a new building coming up right beside this project, which is great. I'm just wondering if there's a way that you can sort of reflect the character of the neighborhood a little bit more in the aesthetic approach. Like, I mean, you're stuck with the building that you built is such that it doesn't look like the little wee houses that are in that neighborhood, and of course it's not going to. But I think when you have some like clapboard, I know you're using vinyl siding, but the types of siding, that kind of thing could be emphasized a bit, maybe just reflecting the neighborhood. One of the things I thought in your design is that there's a real strong emphasis on the angles and that's really highlighted by the dark color that you're suggesting for the sort of the trim around the roof. So it's really highlighting those sharp sort of modern angles. So one thought was that maybe if you played that down and didn't use such a strong contrasting color, that it might then play up your other textures on the building a bit more, and fit in a bit more and look a little less modern, or loudly modern, let's put it that way. And that might help. So, but otherwise a good project, and great to see that street being developed. It's a rather odd mixed street, and then I think it forebodes well for the future for it. So thanks a lot for your presentation. So yes, Doug, you'd like to speak for a few minutes? Okay, go ahead.
Just wanted to, Kevin, on the issue about screening on the top balconies, those balconies are quite large, and so the individual owners would have an opportunity to put planters or hedges on there to screen if they wanted. But those top balconies will get pretty stunning views of the water themselves as well. So the idea of screening on the left there would have taken out view corridor sightings as well. So I think, again, the space itself adds to planters if they want to screen their neighbors. And I just wanted to point out again, too, that this project has a little bit for everybody. So wheelchair accessible, for example, there are 2 units directly accessible from the parking lot as well. Those are the 2 comments I wanted to point out. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Doug.
You muted yourself, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Okay, excuse me. Okay, so let's look at some of the recommendations. First of all, we had one, consider adding some screening or plants to a concrete wall. Now, I think, Jason, you were referring to, was that inside the corridor between the 2 buildings? Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Okay. So consider adding screening or plantings to the concrete wall between the buildings to soften the appearance and environment. Does that sound okay? Okay. Consider ways to differentiate between the CRU unit entrances and the residential entrances. Develop the central corridor as a more usable amenity space. And keeping with the neighborhood guidelines, consider ways to reflect the heritage nature of the neighborhood. And I don't know if you want to add this. We had a little discussion about the privacy on the decks. Does anybody want to include that as a recommendation? No? Okay. Do we want to include a public art issue or just leave that to staff? Yes. Consider adding some public art. And where did you want to specify where in the front? No? Okay. And light sighting. Okay. Consider adding more trees, another tree. Kevin, you proposed that.
Yeah, looking at adding another significant tree to the northwest corner of Irwin Street.
Okay.
And I think with the lighting, I think that's probably going to be dealt with through staff. I think that maybe Christine should decide whether or not we should put it in or we can put it in as a recommendation to provide residential scale lighting throughout the site.
Okay, consider add residential scale lighting.
Yeah.
To the site. Okay. So that's 7 recommendations that I'm seeing here. So does everybody agree? Do you want me to read them through again? You good with that? Okay. So can I have a motion to accept the sorry, we should have just mentioned the variances. I wasn't hearing any objection to the variances. So there's quite a few of them. I won't go through them, but so then if somebody could make a motion then to accept the proposal as presented with the 7 recommendations that we have and with approval for the variance.
Madam Chair, maybe you should just run through those recommendations just one last time.
Oh, okay.
Just so we're clear on them, please.
Consider adding screening or plants to the concrete wall between the buildings to soften the environment. Consider ways to differentiate between the CRU units and the residential entrances. Develop the central corridor as a more usable amenity space. In keeping with the neighborhood guidelines, consider ways to reflect the heritage nature of the neighborhood. Consider adding some public art. Consider adding another tree to the northwest corner of the property. and consider adding residential scale lighting to the property. Good. Okay. All right. Can I have a motion? Yes, Kevin, you're going to motion?
Yeah, I would make a motion to accept the application as presented with those recommendations and support for the variances.
Great. Okay, and seconder, Jason, and all in favor? Great. Okay. Thank you very much to the applicants for coming in and presenting today, and all the best on your project. And I guess that's it. Do you have any more business tonight, this evening, panel? No? Or Angela, did you want to add something?
Oh, no, sorry, I was just waving as people were leaving.
Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting then? Jason motions, seconder, Angela, all in favor? Great. Thanks very much, Christine and Brianna.